I'll
All
stay.
right.
I'll stay here muted. I'll chime in if I have something important to add. Okay.
Oh God. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we are back from break, and we obviously Steven's. He's actually still officially here with us, but I just got him catted out for now. He's actually he's just playing right here. So if he loses
Yeah.
first round, he'll be back. But in the meantime, we're gonna
When
move
he
on
loses.
when he loses. Okay, Richard, you had a big article that came out today.
Yeah.
It's
Fuck, dude.
like,
What happened, man?
I know what the hell's going on. It's like ever since you've been writing for Daily Dime, man, you seem to be as hot as
It's the
Mr.
benefits of an
Interzone
editor, I
Edwards over
think.
here. But
Our editor is good.
yeah,
Very good editor.
So he had a huge article about hacking in League of Legends. It's like #1 on our League of Legends right now, and I'll let you explain it. You're gonna do it more justice than me. Why don't you explain
Yeah,
a little bit?
well, okay, so I've been working on it for a few months now. Basically, for people who maybe have followed it a little bit, there was a series of breaches of Riot servers, and they were done by a guy calling himself Jason King, Jason the God, Jason God, sometimes just God, a variety of names. Anyway, he was targeting Riot specifically, and he was responsible for a bunch of breaches, which included accessing player accounts, which there was a huge number. We didn't quite know how much until we spoke with him. But also, as well, perhaps more hilariously, he hacked Mark Merrill, the president of Riot Games. He hacked his Twitter and took over it. And instead of just tweeting, whatever the usual troll statements would be, he actually, from this database breach that he'd done earlier, he leaked screenshots of a game that Riot had been developing, which they tanked, which was a card game kind of like Hearthstone, which was called League of Legends Supremacy. So this guy had been responsible for all of these breaches against Riot. He took a particular disliking to the Riot company for whatever reason. He never really elaborated why. If I was to speculate, I would say that they're a pretty big deal, and they are known for controlling the narrative and being very PR centric. I think that's a hacker's dream, basically, to be able to take companies like that down a peg or two. What we quickly realized when we were talking to him was the extent of the breach, because what he'd done was they'd gained access to, they'd brute forced an admin's password, got this password, and then internally, Riot were told all staff have to change their password because of this breach. Well, this one guy didn't. And through that, they were able to access a Drupal, I think it's pronounced, admin panel.
Brute force the password. You know how hard that is, unless you have the crappiest password in the world.
The funny thing was, like when I was asking them questions about the methodology,
Oh my God.
they really palmed that off as if it was the easiest part of it. They didn't really want to talk about that. They were like, yeah, it was just brute forcing, like it was just something that you did. But they said what they really liked was the fact that they didn't, shoot their load too quick. They placed a backdoor exploit onto the servers, and through that they were able to access it without Riot's detection. And their plan was to get the entire database. And instead, what they got before they got caught was they got 24.5 million accounts.
What are they going to do with it, though?
Well, the plan, look, I mean, I'm sure you're aware about shady things online, Chris, with your recent Reddit experience.
Oh, man.
But a database of people's information is worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So they're going to sell it to people.
Well, potentially. I mean, I don't think they had any clear plans. Jason, or Shane Duffy, as he's called, he's going to have his final trial in 2 weeks. No more appeals or delays or whatever pending. But he seemed to just get a kick out of screwing with Riot. He did sell accounts on several hacking forums. He particularly targeted the ones that had legacy skins that aren't available for general purchase anymore.
Yeah.
And he was getting between $200 and $800, depending on what the account had. So
I don't understand. Why would you buy it? Like, you buy the account, and then what do you do with it?
You play on it, and you primarily play at a higher level to what you would ordinarily.
No, but I'm just saying, like, the person who owns the account is going to immediately be
well,
locked
that's the
out of
thing.
his account,
Right,
and then they're going to
so
go, why would you buy
Here's the thing. Riot security is notoriously poor, and there's been numerous instances of people who've had their accounts hacked, where even when they've been able to prove ownership or whatever, Riot haven't been able to return their accounts to them.
Oh, wow.
Because they've said you must have given out the password, your account, your responsibility, this kind of thing. But not only that, a lot of these accounts, because it was in chronological order, the way they were ripping it off the server was literally chronological order. So it was, they got the first ever 24.5 million accounts put into the database. So some of these were super old and hadn't been touched for a while. Users had abandoned the game and maybe didn't play on it. But when they bought the skins, they were considered, just regular skins, but obviously over the passage of time, all of a sudden they were rare, scarce, they weren't available for general consumption, and Jason was effectively targeting which ones he felt would be most lucrative. But the money wasn't his primary driving factor, because he could have just sat back with that database and enjoyed himself and sold the odd account here and there. And certainly when the police seized his assets and his computers, they found a wallet with $110,000 of Bitcoin in it, to give you an idea of how much money he might have been pulling in through some of his activities. He wanted to fuck with Riot publicly, so he was hacking high-profile players' accounts and with this information, because they'd obviously registered within the first 24.5 million, and was then sending them to Brazil, transferring them geographically, so they would have to play on servers, that weren't considered to be top competitive environments. So it was an incredible story, and basically, as I said, perhaps the most interesting part of it all is that ultimately it stems from a Riot staff member not changing his password.
Single person.
Yeah, now Jason did give me the name of the guy, and I think it's it would have been horrendously unfair to include that.
Yeah,
in the article. So, but it's there. We're well aware of who it was. I don't know what Riot's reaction to this piece is going to be. I don't know if they're going to think, well, this portrays them in a bad light, or maybe, and ultimately I do have to qualify it. This is the version of the hacking group and the hacker himself. So I wouldn't say take it with a pinch of salt. This feels very real and very genuine, and the evidence I looked at was convincing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wrote it up the way I did. But ultimately, I would imagine that a hacker who's made a living off taking Riot down a peg or two, so to speak, isn't going to mind a chance to slander them even further.
So I'm going to ask a question. Did you ever think about talking to Riot before, like getting their side of the story before releasing the story?
Okay, so what happened was I didn't know where the story was going to go. Or how it was going to come out in the wash. It went through 2 editorial reviews. This is, again, like maybe the 3rd or 4th revision, the one that got published. And I sent them an email yesterday, which they didn't receive until today. My webmail server apparently has been having glitches. Sometimes I don't get emails from Riot addresses. Apparently, when they reply to me, it bounces back. And it looks like when I send to them, sometimes it doesn't go through. So they didn't receive the email until today, shortly before we published, which I do feel bad about that. However, what I will say, Riot traditionally have ignored pretty much every request for comment I've ever sent their way. When I've asked them about the disciplinary stuff, no comment. When I've sent them information about players being elo boosters, no comment, no reply. When I wrote about the Cursed Voice article, when I'd interviewed the Cursed Vice President of Technology and how disappointed they were at Riot's decision to effectively ban the Cursed Voice program, Riot, no comment, no reply. Wow. Okay. So I didn't really expect to hear anything from them. However, after this article's gone live and it's done quite well for itself, they absolutely, I think, will make some form of response. Naturally, the journalistically responsible thing to do is to offer them a right to reply on the Daily Dot. My editors have approved that. I've extended that courtesy to them. I certainly hope they take us up on it. But I think ultimately there's enough of Riot comments throughout the article because it refers to official statements released by the vice president, released by various staff members, official announcement on the forums. I think there's enough of Riot in the narrative to maybe make it balanced. And ultimately, with a story of this nature, it's always going to come down to the, he said, she said, Jason or Shane, sorry, I should say, he's incapable now of being able to release any information that could corroborate his story because all of his devices that had the information on are, they're evidence now. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know how Riot will react to it. I imagine it's a bit of a bloody nose for them because it points to, I think it points to some issues again around A, controlling the narrative, and B, what I think most League of Legends players have known for a while, that their security hasn't been top-notch either.
So I'd like to echo a couple of sentiments that Richard had right here. It's always surprising. Um, Now it sounds like there might have been some technical issues with Richard reaching out this weekend. But in general, when it comes to like sort of Riot, Blizzard, Valve, uh, they're never keen on commenting on something until after something's published and it picks up traction. And it's always
Yeah.
very interesting how quickly the folks from their PR department remember your email address after a story starts going viral. So I think they're obligated to respond. Even if they insist absolutely all of this isn't correct, I think they're sort of obligated to respond. I really enjoyed this piece, so we sort of have like a virtual newsroom over at Daily Dot. So Richard was able to show me this weekend, and I just think it's a really interesting story. There's just so many different parts to it, and it's bonkers. And a lot of this is just like backed up, just what is sort of like in the public sphere, right? Like Google searches of this guy will get you what he's being tried for. You can Google search like these forum messages. And it's bonkers, you know what I mean? Like, and this happens a lot more than you'd think. And it's crazy because League of Legends is the biggest game in the world, and this stuff happens. I don't know if that makes it any better or worse that this happened to them. You hear about security breaches all the time. I think like Target had a huge one last year.
Yeah. That was
But yeah, it's just this is like a 21-year-old kid just like really just going bonkers. So I think it's worth a read. I'm not a League of Legends fan myself, but I think it's like worth the read just because of how crazy this story is. It's just such an interesting story.
And
So
I've been sat on it for a while. I think the thing that really makes me laugh is, we were looking to publish this a little bit sooner because he was meant to have received his final sentencing in June, and I was pitching the story to On Gamers. And I had a bunch of stories kind of queued up, and I was in talks with On Games about maybe joining them, and they didn't want to take me on board for whatever reason. So it kind of got delayed, and fortunately, coincidentally, the trial got delayed as well, or the sentencing, I should say, rather, which is going to be the ultimate full stop to the story, and I'm looking forward to telling that chapter. When it happens in 2 weeks, but this is like this was something I worked on for a while. I'm pretty proud of it. There was a lot involved. It was a big undertaking to reach out to a clandestine hacking group. I was very fortunate to know a security expert who just so happened to know one of the guys in the group, and he got me an in, and we conducted the interviews together. He was my filter, if you like. There's a lot of work went into getting the information. So I hope it's not going to be sort of unilaterally condemned by the Riot PR machine. This is probably one of the pieces of reporting I'm most proud of for a long time. And I'm real pleased that the Daily Dot were keen to take the story on, because I know a lot of other publications probably wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole because of who and what it was about.
Yeah. No, it's a really good article, and obviously there's been a lot of interest on it, given that it is
it's
number one on Reddit right now. So definitely read it if you haven't. I've linked it. Here, I'll link it in the chat. Those of you that have been asking for a while for me to link all the URLs and everything that we talk about on the show, I started to post them on the website. So just check them out on ChanManV.tv. I'm going to post them probably before the show, so that or during the show, so that you guys can kind of follow along. Just you'll have all the links that we look at on the show itself, so I don't have to post them all in the YouTube videos and stuff.
I just want to address something as well, because it came up in the Reddit thread, and I know it's unfiltered and we don't like to get too serious. I mean, hell, we were just talking about Violent Revolution 30 minutes ago or whatever. But there was a lot of people who were criticizing the writing of the article, saying that what you do is you provide a platform for hackers to get attention. You're part of the problem when you promote their activities. Now, I would answer this, and maybe I'm wrong. This is my thinking on it. It doesn't mean it's the absolute default correct way to think about things. But my hackers are gonna hack. That's gonna happen. I mean, it's what they enjoy doing. It's what they're adept at doing. They don't look at a security system of a multi-million-dollar corporation in the same way we would. They look at it as a challenge. They want to break it, and there's a very big circle underground, people comparing and their relative prowess. There's whole forums, very large forums on the internet dedicated to this. It's going to happen regardless. Now, where it becomes an issue for me isn't necessarily what the hackers are doing per se. I think it's a criminal act. There's laws in place. I don't like to apply too much morality to it because you've got varying degrees of hacker. I mean, some people will hack information, and then they will go to the company they've hacked and say, I have done this exploit. If you pay me the money, I'll tell you how. If you employ me, there's various degrees. Some people are just malicious and do it for ego and fame. And much like this guy, they get caught and they end up, facing the consequences. But what I really don't like is when companies basically treat it as almost like, okay, our image has been besmirched, so what we need to do is we need to come out and pretend it never happened or play down the importance of it. And I think that's deplorable. I'm not even saying Riot did this, but I mean, people will remember there's been lots of these, Sony, for example, and to try and play it down as if to say like, oh, it's no big deal. That's incredible. These companies take your personal data, payment transactions in some cases, your credit card details, all date of birth, things like this, and they put it in a database and they tell you it's going to be secure. Now, if someone hacks that and violates it, I mean, they're already at fault because their measures weren't good enough, obviously. But at that point, the only true response is to come out and be like, guys, we fucked up. We're really sorry. We're going to fix this. Please have faith in us that it won't happen again. And I see a lot of companies these days trying to like style it out like it's no big deal. Just change your password, guys. It'll be fine. Forget about it. And, there's so many companies that do this. And that for me, I do find repugnant because these companies are kind of operating on a trust basis. They make money from you directly. And part of that almost like, tacit agreement is that if I use my personal information to engage in a transaction that earns you money, you will at least keep that information secure from people that want to use it for nefarious purposes. So I think by writing about these stories, it brings it to light. The good thing is, after publishing this, several other hackers have come forward and said, we really like the way you handled the story. We want to tell you about some other hacks that other companies have kept under wraps. So I imagine this is going to turn into a series and you'll be able to read all of them at the Daily Dot. So
I think that's this is an important piece too. I think for esports journalism on the whole, just because I think we're finally getting to the point where publishers just need to start paying attention, right? So, in the history of esports journalism, like our big breaks would be things like we scoop roster changes and stuff like this. But I think what made this story really good was like it was just that. So like occasionally you're just reiterating news, right? And that's never that great. But I think one of the things that's really interesting and largely due to organizations like Daily Dot and On Gamers, where like these people can make living wages and not like starve themselves to sleep just reposting things they read on Twitter. It's like this is just an interesting story. Like it's just I encourage anyone who hasn't read it to read it, just because it's just interesting. Like you'll be better off for reading it. It's so it takes you through like everything chronologically, and it's just so bizarre, that this like 21-year-old kid could do all this. And then like Riot's reaction along the way is just really interesting. Yeah. So I think I think it's like a good this could be maybe, I don't know, we're only halfway through the year, but I think this could honestly be like one of the better pieces this year.
I gotta say, I was just gonna add, I'm hoping that Turtle Entertainment are gonna bring back one of those fucking esports awards ceremonies that they have, because it's about time I got a fucking award. Like Chobo PM got it last time, and me and Patrick are colleagues now. But everyone seems to win awards, but I never win them. It's time. I want a fucking award. 2014, I want an award, guys.
Right,
seriously,
man, he's
I don't care what
already.
it is. I don't care what it is, but I am due a fucking award for something. Just for something.
Oh, come on. It's like
Patrick left too, man. He gave up on esports. He's not even working the esports beat.
I know, that was it. Like, he wins the Esports Journalist of the Year in an award that had no other,
I'm done.
people going for it, and then leaves esports. Like, it happened as well at Cadred. There was a guy called Corin Cole. Me and him both had articles nominated the same year. He wrote something like about the death of CGS. And why it happened, which he was all privy to because we were coverage partners and they accidentally sent us the emails, right? So it wasn't even like a great expose. He won the award that year. I did like some mad investigative piece about a scammer who like disappeared, hid his identity, and then came back to esports with a new alias and scammed people twice. That was my work. Yeah, fuck your award. Fuck it. It was at Gotfrag as well. I didn't get an award either. So I due a fucking award, guys. This is bullshit. How many years like do I have to go? So without an award, please just give me an esports Pulitzer. I need it. But yeah,
no,
so
great piece though, Richard. No, it's definitely,
no, thanks. And
again,
honestly, I hope people enjoyed. I will absolutely say this. I know people have probably had some doubts or question marks about my writing style. I have myself as well, which is why I've been pitching articles to other websites with editors, and I accept that at my wretched old age I've got a lot of bad habits, and writers do tend to pick them up. Without the benefit of an editor to check yourself, you generally give in to your more base instincts, and mine is, constructures running off on tangents. I know I'm totally aware of what all my bad habits are, so I'm really glad that the editors, and I said there was 2 of them, the Daily Dot, that made this a good and accessible piece, and I'm glad people are reading it. And maybe people who would ordinarily hate my shit are reading it and enjoying it. So hopefully it doesn't get smashed apart by the Riot PR machine, because it's been pretty. I'm pretty proud of it. It's not often I say that about a piece of writing.
I know, it's very good.
No.
It's very, very good.
Excellent.
Thanks. Well, you don't need to tell me that. So, and also as well, just while we're here, it's got nothing to do with League. People are asking if I sent Avillo his microphone. I absolutely did. He got his mic. I sent it next day delivery. I got him a brand new mic, same mic as mine, a pop filter, and some like proper studio recording cans as well. I got him the
Such
full
a bro,
set.
man. You're such a bro.
Here's the thing. I felt bad about that, and I just want to address this as well, because I don't think we as hosts, and that was my first gig as co-host, I don't think we did John a great service in that show, because John had valid points, and we ended up talking about balance for like half an hour.
Okay,
and
so oh gosh, yeah.
I felt no, I did. I felt kind of bad about.
Yeah, I mean, I think TB ended up getting a lot of hate that actually wasn't deserved, given that they were brought on just to really talk about that. The thing I was most wary about as the host was I didn't want to get into this whole bullying type of episode again, which we've seen Avillo part of in the past with the various other shows, or just in maybe not Avillo, but just we've seen in the past. And I just wanted to avoid that, and that's kind of why I let the discussion kind of go into the balance discussion. And I just felt like it would just be a little bit more productive that way. But all the crap that TB got for it, I felt like was, I don't think was deserved, given that there was a lot of that to be discussed too. And Villo obviously didn't want to talk about it, so it was really unfortunate. And just again, guys, you could stop giving TB crap about that.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, like, as hosts, we did kind of fail a little bit, but I understand why we did.
I take.
No. I mean, I look. Here's the thing. I was so conscious about the whole, oh my god, Richard Lewis talks too much thing, that I just sort of leant back from that entire section and let the car crash happen. It was great to watch, by the way. And I think in terms of entertainment, right up there, and it was one of our most popular shows. In terms of numbers, point, though, but yeah, I mean, John definitely had a point. We probably should have nailed Avillo to the wall a bit more. I've been talking to him privately since now that we're gift bros, and I sent him a microphone.
Look at this guy, man. You're just like yeah, well, no, to everybody now.
Here's why I did it as well, because like some guy on Reddit accused me of doing it to like get on like some fucking pro Richard Lewis circle jerk. Like, trust me, to atone for all the hate I get, it would take more than buying some random streamer a fucking microphone. I got a lot to do, like Hail Mary's the full works, right? So the reason I did it is because like some of John's criticism was fair but harsh in a way that only John can do. And he said his microphone sucks. And I just thought, like, you know, I went through a period where I was coming on this show with a sucky ass microphone, and everyone was like, I love listening to Richard, because everyone does, obviously. But I can't stand listening to his microphone, so fuck him, don't have him on anymore. And I was like, yeah, you know, and John helped me pick a good sound setup, right? So I wanted to pass on that, you know, carry it forward. And it's John's legacy that did it. I know he probably's never do it for a Villo, but I was happy to, and hopefully he stops doing his toxic, horrible, whiny shit and goes on to become the true savior of esports that he wants to be, and I genuinely believe he does.
All right, well, let's move on, and we'll talk about some Dota 2 now.
Bring in a big old James E. Lambkin.
Okay. So we're gonna bring in Kennegat.
There's a lot to talk about. I'm sorry, I orchestrated this like while the show was going on, but there's been just absolutely so much that happened in the last week. We could use another person, if only for me and him to bounce ideas back and forth. And I think you guys,
it's just too much to follow this weekend. I was watching some of it, but not enough of it. I mean, one thing that we can't talk about while I'm setting this up is there's so many streams for TI during this week, and there were some really great ideas, like the noob stream. I thought that was actually a pretty fantastic idea, quite honestly, having something that was a little bit separate. And you know, we've always talked about some casters dumbing down stuff in StarCraft 2, and how like a part of the community hates that, and yet it's kind of a necessity to try to get, you know, just have it to be more accessible to newer players or just newer viewers. So having a separate stream for that, I felt like was an interesting idea.
Let's start with the bad. So
Okay,
I don't know what you guys
sure.
covered last week. The first day was the big story from the first day was just sound problems. And for a tournament of that size, like you would hope that everything was figured out. You know, the first couple of games were filled with echoes.
Yeah.
Some of the Dota TV shit was fucked up. But that was figured out pretty quickly. I also think the noob stream on the first day too wasn't as great as it could have been. It was just sort of, the noob streams was just sort of like where the top tier casters weren't, and they weren't necessarily explaining everything to noobs. It was just where the top tier casters, the more like, I guess if you were like a casual Dota streamer or personality, like that was where you ended up. But it was resolved pretty quickly. To put it into perspective, though, I think James was actually the person who pointed this out. I remember this tweet. Like, there were 33 games on the first day, and I think there were no less than 30 for the following days. It was just an absurd amount of games.
James, welcome, man. Kenny gets on the phone.
Whoa,
you're loud, boy. You are loud.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
It's all right. I think we need to get Chris to fix you up.
I can't fix that exactly. Just turn your mic down just a tiny bit.
I'm doing it on my tablet. I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'll just talk softer.
Okay, that's better.
Or
That's
like,
actually
or
better.
put it
Yeah,
further away
that's
from
good.
you.
Yeah.
Good. I'll
That's
try
pretty
not
good
to
for a
antagonize
tablet.
you too much.
Actually, it's pretty good for a tablet.
Cool.
Okay, so Cody, why don't you lead the talk? Just, you know, TI4 obviously this entire week. The finals or the finale is gonna be happening this weekend. Here's the brackets.
Yes.
I'm gonna show on screen right now. Some phenomenal games. I caught the newbie games at the end of the day yesterday. That was just crazy.
And they were great. Yeah, that was quite a
I'll
tear.
let you
We'll
guys
talk about that. So I wanted to start with just like the insane amount of games. I think when the format was released, everyone was just sort of taken aback with just how much play there was going to be, right? Like, it was a minimum of 120 games. That's a shit ton of Dota to watch. So that paired with just the sheer number of heroes we saw played, I think we were into the single digits for heroes in captain's mode that weren't picked, which is just insane. I don't know a ton about League of Legends, but I saw from the folks that I did ask, like I was told that last year's season finals had a very, you know, there was a relatively smallish pool of folks that were getting picked and banned. And we saw crazy things like support Juggernaut, which was just absolutely insane. The tournament itself had its own sort of metagame. Like, as each day progressed, like, certain strategies were figured out. Very early on, people were picking Disables plus Skywrath Mage just to take advantage of her nuke, Piz nuke, and then later in the tournament that dissipated a little bit. So James, like, you watched the games,
I
like,
did.
what did you think just about like the sheer number of heroes you saw played and like the strategies you saw.
Skywrath Void was pretty popular.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we all kind of expected that, right? Like, we've been talking for months now about how teams were sort of, hiding what they wanted to do. But something I mean, in retrospect, not surprised, but I think surprised at first was that teams seemed to be very reactive to what was going on. So it was like, I think one or two teams did the Void Skywrath thing, and then everyone was like, oh, by the way, this is amazing. Now we're going to try and do it. And so that's like you were saying, there was a couple days there where it was just going on over and over. Tide, super popular as always. There's a even though there was a pretty wide range of heroes used, there was a few staples like Tide in there. Razor was used a bunch. I mean, yeah, it's super interesting. I'm actually super excited for the main event because they have, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. E.g., I think even more, but for their next set of games. So I'm excited to see what they've actually held, especially E.g. to see if they have anything they've held back on going into the main event.
So far,
we actually compiled some statistics over here at the Daily Dot, which it's very interesting. Razor was actually the most picked hero thus far. Okay. Through the tournament at 50, it's like just over 55%, 55.1. Wow. Win rate just shy of 40 though. Really interesting.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty low.
Lycan on the exact opposite side picked 12% of the time because its ban was 87. So this was actually 99.3% of the time people said they did not want to play against Lycan, which makes sense.
I thought a really interesting stat was that in all of Alliance's games, every team banned Nature's Prophet because they knew the rat was coming, and they're just like, every team said no. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, I think, and then we'll talk about Alliance falling short a little bit here too. They're a team that is very easy to sort of like put in a category and figure out. Their split push is like sort of the thing that they're known for. And that last heartbreaking game, it was heartbreaking for them, and it was really great for Evil Geniuses. Sort of just stole the show. I'm looking to see if there's anything else that really stands out here from the stats. Doom, really high up there, 60% win rate. Picked or banned a shit ton. Skywrath was actually came out at like a 50 even picked. Banned a lot of the time. The win rate when he was played was just over 50. Tidehunter, very, very popular. These big impactful heroes just showed up a lot. So let's move into, I guess, the... one of the things I wanted to talk about was the fall and rise of Team Liquid, right? Mm-hmm. So day one, chewing their way through the play-in, right?
Yeah, all Team Liquid on the first day.
I didn't think the Team Liquid was going to even make it through the play-in, to be absolutely honest. James, your thoughts?
No faith.
No faith.
I mean, I think they thought they were the strongest team going in there. It was VP, them, MVP, and who did they play first round? CIS. And I mean, we knew that CIS hadn't played together for like 40, 45 days or something, so that's like, you're done. So, I mean, I thought they had a pretty solid chance. And, they played super well, but the teams they were playing against, like, I think VP was probably going to be their hardest. And since they didn't have to play VP, then, it wasn't super difficult for them. I mean, I think going as deep as they did was probably a bigger surprise, especially I think their first day or two of play was pretty good. But they actually didn't play their hardest games until after that.
Yeah, so they...
So, I mean, really excited, but then we all kind of knew, like, oh, this is about to get way worse tomorrow, so...
Yeah.
Let's see, yeah.
They claw through the play-in, but here's the really interesting part, too, is, like, so they claw through the play-in. They're effectively the 16th seed. Mm-hmm. They played Navi US the first game and just get fucking destroyed. I love Jimmy to death, but I got to call him out here. I think he gave up 3 kills in the first 5 minutes in the off lane, and he was getting trapped over by the side lane shop. Like, it was just it was brutal, right? And I think they don't. If I'm not mistaken, in their games for Navi US, they didn't kill anybody, and I tapped out at like 15 minutes. So they're the team that qualifies to the play-in. They're not looking super sharp, and I was just like, oh, holy moly, Liquid, And they haven't had a great year too, admittedly, and I think they'd be the first people to admit that. So first game goes, and I'm just like, ah, shit. Well, here Liquid is, and then they just fucking play out of their minds, and they look really sharp for the rest of Phase 2. Well, for most of Phase 2, right?
Yeah.
Well, this was where I was hoping you would chime in on their games.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were still talking and want to talk over you. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
No, I mean they're. I mean, okay. So be honest with you, I didn't think they were going to make it into the top 8 at all. I thought they probably would get through their wild card and get in, and then get basically crushed. And I think in their very first, I think it's their first map was it against Navi US? Who was it against? So they got crushed.
It was
Navi US. Yeah, they
US.
didn't get a single kill. Not a single kill.
And I'm still in an old Skype chat with a bunch of old TL guys, and we were just in there. We were like, oh my god, this is over. It's going to be like, MUFC. It's going to be a disaster. But yeah, they pulled it back, and it's disappointing that they didn't get through, especially considering how relatively close they were. But there was a lot of opportunities they screwed up on. There was some throwing, there was some misplay stuff, as well as they did play. And the thing with those best of ones is that it's so, a lot of it is luck based, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you come out with something, usually what happens is the next game, a lot of these teams are pretty good at adapting, or banning stuff, or reacting to what happened in game one. And you don't have that liberty in this, so you see a lot of that stuff going on. So yeah, unfortunate, but ultimately, even though I hated to see it happen, I guess LGD getting through is probably better for the overall, say, competitiveness of the. I think
LGD is the team. So to put it in perspective, so there was just effectively a huge round robin group stage for folks who don't follow Dota. That was phase 2 of the tournament. And going into the next round of phase 3, there's a best of 3, and the team that is eliminated from that is they're done. They don't get to play at CL's Key Arena. Team Liquid had to play LGD. LGD beat them 2-0. It was really disappointing for me personally, just because I know a lot of those guys. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. And from that, LGD would go on to play Cloud9. Cloud9 would win, and then DK would be Cloud9. Another one of the huge stories is Alliance, so last year's winners not qualifying.
At all, not even close.
Yeah.
That's the biggest story, I think.
I think yeah. Well, so, there's some interesting theories around it, right? Like, if you think about going into the event, especially in the 2 months leading up to it, everybody's been looking at Alliance as far as community goes, as far as media goes. Even on the Valve YouTube channel, they got a special video that they went and filmed of the Alliance guys last year. Mm-hmm. So everybody is watching them and studying them and seeing what they've been doing. When they practice against them in scrims, even if they're private, they're still keeping track of what's going on there. So everyone was super focused on them and not focused at all on teams like, say, Mouse or Liquid or, maybe Navi US or whoever, right? Bulba came out with a story that leading up to TI, no one would scrim with them at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Which is crazy.
None of these teams, which is yeah, I know, it's pretty amazing. So the only team they were playing against was Navi US for, 6 weeks or something. Which is insane. But what everybody else was doing was prepping for Navi. And at this level of play now, and you can see it in the results of all the teams, right? In the previous internationals, you had plenty of cases of teams going 17-1 or huge numbers of wins or not dropping a game or dropping one game, and that just didn't happen this year because I think the skill gap has closed so much.
I agree too. Everyone was playing better Dota this year.
Everyone's playing better. The you know who is the best isn't is not clear cut. Like last year, it was very clear going into TI3. Alliance is the best team here. They're insane, and they're probably going to win this thing. And this year, it's like, man, who knows, right? All these teams are beating each other. Team Liquid was beating teams much better than they are, and losing to teams that they probably shouldn't have.
Why is that though? I mean, is it because of strategies or is it because of just pressure?
Best of one is crazy.
Best of one.
Just best of one.
Best of one is
lose a game in the draft. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like that. That's probably something that will be debated a bunch. After TI is the best of one format, because specifically in Dota, there's just so many random factors that can affect you winning. Like you can, if they level one Roche and get it and you don't notice, which is what happened in that final game of, I think it was. Who was it?
Versus someone. It was
IG?
Newbie versus
IG,
someone.
IG? Yeah.
Like if that happens, it's just like, oh, the game is over. Like that's it.
Yeah, you start your lanes at level 2, and you're laning against with extra gold. Yeah. Alliance day one fucking terrible. I think they won one game at most.
Wow.
Day one, and they played a lot of Chinese teams the day one, so that was going to be their sort of harder team. Really interesting thing, man, is the final game of that phase was actually Evil Geniuses versus Alliance. If Alliance wins, they qualify for a tiebreaker for the last spot into phase 3. If Evil Geniuses win, they qualify directly into the winner's bracket for a TI. And that's like I don't know, like fucking $600,000 automatically, even if Evil Geniuses never win something else. It's just so insane. Alliance, I pegged Alliance like 6th through 10th when the tournament was starting. That's sort of where I thought they would go. So seeing them wash out was just crazy. Mouse Sports also with the fucking huge throw of their lives in the tiebreakers. Jesus Christ. I think it was maybe... It was the game where they had the Nature's Prophet and the Anti-Mage, and they were just so far ahead. A phase 2 will be maybe more interesting than the entire bracket, just to see the way folks crumble and don't crumble. But I'd like to move on to the positive, right? So we had Team Liquid sort of falling short after maybe throwing a Hail Mary the first couple of days. Evil Geniuses is looking really fucking good, man. They're looking really sharp, and North America has been typified as just a fucking weak region in Dota for as long as Dota's existed. And they're,
representing.
They're holding it down. They got 2 chances. Kennegat, how do you think EG versus DK goes?
I think they have a really, really good chance. I mean, I think probably on paper DK is probably a better team by whatever percentage we want to argue. But I think they have a very good shot. Those guys are all individually super skilled, and PPD seems to have total control on a team of crazy people. And is like something I always complain about especially in Dota teams is that you have guys who say I'm the captain, or I'm doing draft, or I'm calling play, but that's very, very different from being a leader. It's entirely different, and I think so many teams are missing leadership, and it seems like EG hasn't in PPD. So without having sat in any of their scrims or any of their official matches, it seems like it's had an effect. So yeah, I think they can absolutely beat DK, especially with the amount of time they have to prep.
Yeah, the crazy thing is just, everyone on that team is just there's a little bit of reverence surrounding them. Artesia is this wonder kid right at mid. But Universe is also a fantastic player. The 2 supports PPD and Zai are just everyone worships them. Mason is of the entire fivesome the person who the community, I guess, is like most reluctant to say like has truly transcended. But they're just like a sick team. Everyone it goes nuts. Like you see incredible plays out of everyone, and I think they're going to be a crowd that really can channel the hype from what I would presume would be a predominantly United States crowd.
Yeah,
over
the crowd
there in
favorite
Seattle.
by
Oh,
far,
yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. No,
China, though,
I'm
fucking
really
back.
excited for that.
China making a huge mark on the top 8.
But and as you'd expect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as everyone has given credit to North America for stepping up, it's if you look at the regional breakdown of the top 8, 4 of those teams being Chinese, it's pretty much in line with what we'd expect. Between 3 and 5 teams being Chinese is right in the ballpark it should be. So yeah, America stepping up, yes, but that's really a statement more about the fact that they were, beating Chinese teams much better than they were maybe on paper in best of ones. So, well, now is when it really counts, and in best of threes when the Chinese teams can react. So, we'll see.
Right, out of
Navi, we got to see what happens with too, because
I was going to ask about that.
That game with Cloud9, I think Cloud9 is probably actually the favorite, but it's, every year those guys still random with this.
Are we going to see some Navi magic? That's what I was going to actually ask you guys.
Navi
They seem to
similar
bring
to
it on
Seattle.
that last day, man. The finale for the events in the last 2. I feel like they've come out of nowhere and just surprised people, become the crowd favorite, and almost pulled it off, right?
I think they run really well, like luck wise. They run really well. And I think going into this though, everyone was kind of like, I don't know if the luck is actually going to carry them into top 8 at all. I think a lot of people were, certainly if you asked, who do you think is going to do better, Alliance or Navi? I think most people would have hedged their bets on Alliance doing much better than Navi, and Navi probably washing out very early on. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so cheesy and corny to say, you never count those guys out. But I mean, I think, I did count them out, and I think a lot of people did, and rightfully so. But for some reason, they're able to still turn it on and scrape by. And I think it would actually kind of suck if they beat Cloud9, because I'm not sure if they can get as far into the tournament as Cloud9 can this year.
I think. All right, let's do. I love predictions. Let's do this.
Definitely
let's
predictions.
Do this. Okay, so I'm gonna do my prediction. I think Newbie beats VG.
Yeah.
I think EG beats DK. I think EG loses to Newbie. I think IG beats LGD. I think EG beats IG. I think Cloud9 beats Navi. I think Cloud9 loses to VG. And I don't even fucking know where I am anymore.
You've got IG versus VG in the losers bracket right now.
Okay. No. EG beat IG.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
EG
it's
versus
it's EG versus VG. I think I think EG qualifies through the losers bracket. I think then they play Newbie in the grand finals. That's what I think's happening.
Newbie's on fire, man. I've watching them.
They went nuts in the last 2 days. They went 7-1 in their last 2 days.
I caught
they
3
went
of theirs.
7-1.
Crazy. They seem to be the hottest team right now.
I don't know if EG will beat IG in a best of 3. I think they can beat DK, but IG I don't know. Especially if just coming off of what happened at Frankfurt, I still think the IG
the Shred Fest, the fucking 22-0 Express to Hell. You think
it's not even that, but just like the thing that's super impressive about Newbie and IG is like you see these situations where like the difference between those two teams for me and say Liquid is that both those IG and Newbie can be severely behind, and you see them down to like they're just their tier 4s, and if it's Team Liquid, I'm like already turning off the stream because I'm like I can see what's going on in their playroom. They've all stopped talking to each other. and they've kind of resigned themselves to being defeated. And what you see out of the IG guys is like they'll lose racks or something, and then they're like, no, we actually refuse to lose, and and come back and fight back. And you see it in some of the foreign teams too, but IG specifically is super tenacious, and so I think that will actually carry them, and has carried them in the past farther than some of these other maybe less experienced or younger teams.
Go through the bracket. So it's on Channy's thing. So just go through it like I did.
Here,
the things that matter is the final, effectively, and I'll remember the final.
Right.
And I'll
So
we'll be there in person, so I'll badger you over beers about whether you're a fucking idiot or not. And then you can do the inverse with me.
Okay. Let me open it.
Just the image of the brackets. Yeah.
So I think newbie beats VG.
Bracketology here.
EG, DK. I know I said EG beats DK. Actually, I'm going to say DK beats EG first round. And then DK beats newbie.
Wow. Okay.
And on the lower bracket, I think Cloud9 will beat Navi. IG will beat LGD. And then what's it? IG against who?
IG against EG at that point.
EG.
Mm-hmm.
I think IG beats EG there. And I think Cloud9 will beat VG. Cloud9 against IG. It's probably IG, right? And then
No, it can't be. It can't. Oh, IG versus Cloud9 in the loser
IG
bracket
versus
finals.